Well, thank you all so much for coming. Just keep your cards for a minute and we'll collect them. Because on the back side, if you have questions, because I'm going to go through this and you might have some questions, just write down a word or a question. Keep it in your mind as we go forward. Well, I want to thank you for coming because as you saw in the newsletter, we have some big announcements with LWR right now. And Ascension is probably one of the first Lutheran congregations that is actually getting a presentation about this. This announcement about a strategic partnership with another humanitarian organization was just publicly announced on January 14th. So here it is the 27th, and Ascension is going to get the news pretty early on. And part of the reason is because Ascension has been so generous and responsive to Lutheran World Relief through many years. Just in the last 3 years, almost 500 quilts have been sent from Ascension to our warehouses. We have 2 of them, one in Minneapolis, one in Baltimore. And almost 2,000 kits, school kits, personal kits, baby care kits, they have been shipped to our warehouses. So, and for distribution all over the world. So thank you. And everything I share with you today does not mean that we won't be accepting quilts and kits in the future, because we will. That's partly how we got started 75 years ago, was after World War II, when there was a huge humanitarian crisis in Europe with all the refugees, and Midwestern farmers shipped warm coats and other personal items, as well as container ships full of their wheat and oats. Oh, let me give the Newmans a card.
Oh my goodness.
You never know. You might get lucky for a treat today.
Just for info, from now on, this class starts at 11.
I'll keep it in mind. And you.
So before I get into our news, I'm going to share with you some of the things that Lutheran World Relief has been up to and some of the things that you have supported as we follow our mission, both in working with small farmers and agricultural communities around the world, and as well as humanitarian areas. So the first slide shows a family in Burkina Faso. They are farmers, small grain farmers, but in Burkina Faso they deal with drought a lot, and so the seeds that they had were seeds that when planted took 6 months from germination to harvest. So we helped them first to get hybrid seeds that would germinate to harvest in 3 months, and then also gave them the tools and techniques of farming so that they would have the better crops and more income that way. But they also, the goats, were an insurance policy. Come on in. Here. Karsten's not going to tell you about it. He's not going to embarrass you.
Jeff, we started at 11.
What? What time is
Good
it?
job.
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's right.
Aw.
Front or back row, whichever you pick.
This is.
So their insurance policy for this family is 2 female goats and a male goat that we gave them. And this allows them, if for some reason their agricultural crops don't get to harvest, they have a backup for income for their family. But let's see what we also did. Goats are a big deal, aren't they, Mary?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, didn't you lead in Gifts of Hope one year a whole project that was goats?
Yeah, we had 700 from this congregation.
So LWR gifts as well as ELCA good gifts, you can buy goats and we send them to places. We use that money so that a family like this actually gets goats. And you're going to hear more about what happened with the Nigerian family on this short YouTube and the kind of support that we give to a village that gets goats from us. And my technician, I must thank Paul.
Kuna lahiya da ni an matsala ba mu gara ba. Da? Ba ci abinci. Suna na Abubakar Gado, ni na likitan dabbobi na nan garin Tarna. Ana taimaka tunda yanzu wanda ɗan bisa ta da lahiya ya zaka yin nemi ko ya ba da kuɗi an taimaka wanda za a sha sai ki zazzage wanga hunci sai ki ba shi sha. Shi an da babban jin daɗi ka ba da magani a warki. Shi kan kai shi taimaka bayan ka taimaka kuma kana samun wani abu daga gare su. Saboda haka nan ne ya sani ka shawarin nuna su ma rayuwa ta gare su kenan wanda ya taimaka ma rayuwa shi kan kai shi akwai wani sakamako da ko daga wajen Allah ma wani ka taimaka to vitamin kenan da ake ba su shi na sa dan da sa sai ya ci ya ɗauki kowace shi ya in ma na sai da ana kaga lokacin da ɗauki kowace shi in ka zo kasuwa nan da na sai ka sai ina ganin daga cikin kai kiwo ne wata 4 bayan wata 4 in ya kai ya koshi kamar da shi sai suwa kudin nan da an sama kamar da su abinda an riba ka kai kuka aje kai kamar da kudi ba wani kenan riba ta za ka ɗiba ka rike uwa kudin kamar da su can su ko wani su ko wasu mata waɗanda ba a ba su ko a kira su a ba su.
To na samu riba da na samu ya taimaka min sosai tunda da kudin da na samu riba shi da na koma ina sana'a da shi ina samu da na gudanar suwa da suna nake haka nan sanu ina shuwa da riba na ji daɗin ta kuma ita ta nake shuwa har yanzu ita jama'a nake aiki.
Jin daɗi na wata murna ta wani ci gaba na ga mutanen gari.
Fattened in 4 months, income, selling, so that's a, are you all right?
I gotta clean that up, I'll get it. You continue, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So this is one of the things that LWR has been doing very well for a long time, taking smallholder farmers and helping them. You know, most of them are in poverty areas, helping them improving their farming methods. Here it was goats and also grain, but we also were based, our origin was dealing with emergencies, either human-made emergencies, humanitarian disasters, or natural-made. So this is a group of women, or girls, that are in West Mosul, Iraq. And thank you, Anita. If you remember, Iraq was overrun by Islamic terrorists, and the families were really traumatized. Part of what we did in West Mosul originally was portable bread making machines because all of the bakeries were destroyed. So one of the first things we did in Iraq was the bread making machines. But we also developed safe havens for children because they were very traumatized. So we set up 3 community centers, and this was through support from you, 3 community centers that were safe havens for children. And these children, first of all, drew about the war and things that had traumatized them. Now they're drawing things like our children do, you know, the family, flowers, blue skies, and that sort of thing. So it was a place of healing for them. And this was, our refugees now look very different from the German and European refugees of 1945. Now we're going into places like Iraq. We also are in, if you're on our email list, you might have gotten a letter talking about what we did in Lebanon. Syrian refugees received gardening tools and seeds and were able to grow a garden in Lebanon and making friends with the Lebanese. We also have been doing that in refugee camps in Uganda, where South Sudan refugees are flooding into Uganda, and we're teaching them gardening techniques as refugees, so they have a food supply even within the refugee camps. I think the average year most people expect to be in a refugee camp is 5 years. That's an average. So it's where they live, and we can help them in agriculture, diversify their diet. So you were with us in these refugee camps as Lutherans. So the next picture is taken in Puerto Rico. Normally, Lutheran World Relief only focuses on international disasters, humanitarian or human-made disasters. ELCA Lutheran Disaster Response deals domestically. But our board, after what happened in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico being a U.S. territory would not normally be a place where we would go after a Hurricane Maria, but we knew we had the techniques that could really make a difference at that time because we've done them so many places around the world. So our board actually voted, let's do something in Puerto Rico. So we did. We did solar lanterns for people because, as you know, their power grid was devastated, and so they had no electricity and no lights. We did water filters and water purification. We've done that all over the world. We know how to do that. And we did cash assistance. But for Elba and her husband in Puerto Rico, it was having no power was especially difficult because she's on dialysis. They had been without power for 7 months. Well, we set up some solar power systems in communities so that they would have refrigeration, they would have things that lighting and that sort of thing. We put a solar powered system on her house, so now instead of having to go to various clinics where there is power for dialysis, she has that in her home. So that's one of the things, again, that you were able to do in your support for Lutheran World Relief, is to provide in emergency situations such as for Elba. And we thank you. But now we have some exciting news. And that is that we have formed a strategic partnership with another humanitarian organization called IMA. And like I said, this was just announced on the 14th of January publicly. You can go on our websites or IMA website and see the press release. But you might say, who is this IMA World Health? Well, let me tell you a little bit about IMA. It stands for Interchurch Medical Assistance. And 60 years ago, now remember, next year LWR will be 75 years old. 15 years after we were formed, LWR and 10 other relief organizations, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Methodist, American Baptist, Church of Christ, Disciples of Christ, 10 other relief organizations from other church bodies said, we need to form something to deal with medical supplies in the developing world. We're doing these other projects, but that is a gap. So they were able to go to pharmaceutical companies and get medicines and equipment to take to the developing world. As a matter of fact, in our next slide, this was a annual report from 1978 of Lutheran World Relief. So 40 years ago, I'll read it to you. Through the Interchurch Medical Assistance Organization, LWR receives for use overseas selected medicines and supplies given by various pharmaceutical companies. So well over 40 years, we've been working with IMA, having helped start it 60 years ago. So I think you see where this is going. It's very complimentary from LWR, and we know each other. As a matter of fact, through the years, they tallied up $75 million of support that LWR and IMA have done together, most recently in South Sudan in nutrition. But let's see another thing that IMA does in Tanzania. There'll be some language it's hard to understand, but I think you'll get the concept in the subtitles. This is dealing with young children, the first 1,000 days of their lives.
This is called the health demonstration, and usually mothers gather here to do some cooking demonstration. On the start of the program, children are being weighed, and the program identifies those who have, the nutrition status of the children. Then the program goes on until 30 days, when the children are being weighed again to see if the health status has an improvement. Then again, the program is keep on moving from one village to another.
Unamwekea mchanganyiko kwenye uji, lakini kulikuwa hatujapata huu mpango. Sasa huu mpango uliokuja tumepata vingi. Kwa mfano mchanganyiko tuliokuwa tunauchanganya huo, ona umetuletea mafanikio.
So now that mothers are told how to make delicious food, delicious and nutritious food, the children's conditions are improving.
So that's one of the types of programs that IMA is involved in, dealing with nutrition, diversification of diet with children in their first 1,000 days. But they also provide primary health care services in some of the most fragile areas around the country. They promote maternal and child health through immunizations and malaria treatment. This nutrition kind of program, this isn't only done in Tanzania, I know it's done in Southeast Asia also. And her t-shirt has, "I know my HIV status, do you?" This was in Africa. They do patient testing and treatment services, as well as behavioral change campaigns. And then they are also distributing medicine and treating Ebola and malaria and helping the communities care for those affected. They also respond to preventing gender and sexual-based violence. They are a $94 million NGO, and Lutheran World Relief is $53 million. So they have a completely different kind of revenue streams. Many of you were at my presentation last April when I showed the revenue circle, and you saw that nearly 80% of our revenue comes from individuals and congregations. And about 20% come from grants like from USDA or USAID or foundations like Starbucks or Berkeley or other private foundations. Their revenue circle looks completely different from ours. 99% grants. In the last 8 years, they have quadrupled their growth. And they have done that because they have an expertise in treatment in public health, and they have chosen to go to riskier, more fragile areas around the globe. You need to hear from more than me about this, so I have our two CEOs. Oh, I forgot this slide. Sorry, I'll go back. So again, why are we doing this and why are we doing this now? 60 years of knowing each other. As a matter of fact, our senior vice president in charge of our agricultural programs was chair of their board, IMA board. So we know IMA in and out, and we've been a partner with them. Both leaders are recognized in the world for what we do. LWR is known for its agricultural expertise as well as their humanitarian assistance at times of emergencies. Both organizations are strong, robustly financially strong. So let's hear what the two CEOs are talking about as far, and this was filmed in December and shared with the staff and board, so this is rather fresh as well. So let's hear what they think. Oops.
My name is Rick Santos. I'm President and CEO of IMA World Health.
I'm Daniel Speckard. I'm President and CEO of Lutheran World Relief.
So I'm really excited about the partnership between IMA and LWR because I see three really important things happening. First, coming together to give us a greater impact in the world. We'll be able to touch more lives. We'll be able to touch them more deeply. Secondly, I'm very excited about the way that both of us do partnership. I think there's just this natural coming together of working with communities, working with local partners, and I feel like it's really just one of those areas that people talk about and don't really do well, and that IMA and LWR both talk about, both do well, and can do better. And then really the third thing for me is that I really see a good synergy between the way that we work in terms of our business models, that IMA has been really focused on technical obligations to public donors, and LWR has really been focused on doing great work with individuals, congregations.
For us, impact is always the center of what we do. I think most people that work in Lutheran World Relief are here because of our mission. And that mission to help families and communities overseas living in extreme poverty lift themselves out of poverty and be able to sustain that and withstand shocks and challenges as the family progresses is not an easy task. And so for us, we're excited about the possibility to strengthen that resilience in those communities and families. We know that health is a key component to success, and that all it takes is one bad health incident to push a family that we've helped through livelihoods and rural development out of poverty back into poverty. So the idea that we will bring together both this livelihoods, rural development, and the health components to be a holistic reach to families and communities is exciting to us.
How this conversation got started for me was that I had been doing some thinking about the environment. I had just come back from a sabbatical that my board had given me, and I had put a couple things on the table for the board to think about, and really one of them was, how do we look at the external environment? How are we positioning ourselves for the future? And I think that conversation you and I had and here was really the place where I realized that you and I had a very similar view of both the external environment and how to begin to position ourselves for the future.
I agree. I think I know from my perspective, and particularly the people I work with at Lutheran World Relief, is we're doing these jobs to change the world. And the challenge with our ability to achieve that in what becomes increasingly a more chaotic world is that we have come to the conclusion that we need to combine forces to be more successful as institutions, but also have impact in the field. And for us, this is a perfect match in the context of, because we're so complementary in terms of the sectors we work in terms of the geography where we work, in terms of the talents that we each bring, that this was eye-opening for me in the sense that, yes, this fits because of health and rural livelihoods, and because of our fundamental values that underpin both our organizations as faith-based institutions who are really mission-focused on ending suffering and poverty in the world.
So you heard from the two CEOs. We started these conversations probably, or Daniel Speckhard, our CEO at LWR, brought this up to us in meetings probably in 2017. And a presentation was done by a third party that came in and talked about the NGO map, if you will. NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And LWR is considered a small to medium NGO in the world of NGOs. IMA is considered a middle sized NGO at about 100 million. And combining to be 150 million, we're medium to medium high in NGOs of this type, of the humanitarian type. And so he talked with us about the impact that we could be having in more places if we were to find a partner that we could partner with that was complementary to the work we did. So one of the ways that funding works from grants from our governments, or from the United Kingdom, or from Sweden, or from USAID, or whatever, or from foundations, is you've got to kind of prove yourself. You've got to be able to go out and actually show that what you write in a grant proposal you can deliver on. And so LWR, $1.5 million, $10 million projects, we got that locked in. We just got a $22 million project about 3 years ago. We're in the third year of that from USDA, Burkina Faso, 90,000 sesame seed farmers, okay, are being helped. So this was a huge step, and I am quite sure that it was part of the track record that we had been on, but it was also because of some connections in Washington, D.C. through Daniel Speckhard, our CEO. And it meant that we had to really gear up for that big of a project because our projects typically aren't that big. And we have been successful because every year they want to have reports and they want to see what we're doing. It's all, you know about this. Anybody who's worked in that public sector, you know about the accountability you have to have. Well, IMA just received a $44 million contract to work on Ebola at the borders of Uganda and Congo. They have proven in that kind of sector that they can deliver on what they say they can do in the Congo or dealing with Ebola. So their expertise in forging good strategic partnerships with foundations and with governments is what is going to really inform this new entity, this new strategic partnership that we'll have together. So let's see what we're going to do first, because we already have strategically said there are 3 things that we're going to bring our expertise together. One, we're going to work in Haiti. You might remember the disaster that hit Haiti over a decade ago, and you were maybe asked, will you contribute to Haiti for this natural disaster? And Lutherans responded significantly, and we were there, I believe, for 10 years, dealing with how we deal after a natural disaster. IMA is still there, dealing in the health, water, sanitation, and dealing with cholera. So this is again a place that we're going to forge together going forward. And then the Ebola on the Uganda and Congolese border. So that's great. That is something that is in their wheelhouse and is expanded with this new grant. And then providing treatment for pediatric and cervical cancer in Tanzania. When we looked at the maps as far as where we overlapped in our kind of work and the work of IMA, Tanzania and Haiti, we weren't so much in Congo, but we were in West Africa. So we said, let's go from where we have a position of strength when we first start. So those are the things that we're doing now. And so you might say, why should I, as a Lutheran, continue to support LWR? You know, you've got a big $150 million organization. What's my little $100, or what difference does it make if I do a quilt or a kit? Well, let me tell you, we would not have even gone this far with IMA had it not been for the Lutheran support. And they know that because IMA does not have a donor base like we do. And there are some things that we do that just are not funded by any organization, any grant-making organization. For example, what we do for humanitarian disasters is almost completely done by donations from LWR and Lutherans. Yes, the Gates Foundation has been very good for us, $800,000 for the Philippines when we had that disaster there. But we do millions, and we're there for many years because of Lutherans supporting us. I don't know about you, but I don't think there are going to be fewer disasters. And so this is still going to be a real cornerstone of what we do together. Another thing that I saw, and that granting organizations look for, is does the organization asking for a grant have skin in the game? Are they going to partner with us? I've seen it 3 times in the 3 different countries that I visited with LWR. I saw it in Peru when we were working in a very remote area with dairy farmers up at 12,000, 14,000 feet. And we were partnering with Goldfields Mining Company of South Africa, helping the community improve their herds and the quality of their milk and building cheese houses. I saw it in Colombia last year with Starbucks Foundation. They said, yes, these are our farmers and we want our coffee to improve, but we want our farmers to be organic and we want them to have improved health. We partnered with Starbucks and put some of your money together in that project in Colombia. And we do that over and over again. Usually we become a lead partner so that it's our staff that works with them. This isn't going to discontinue because not all grants are going to be huge and not all grants are going to serve Ebola. And quite honestly, the agricultural grants are harder to get. They are more competitive and they usually are much larger than our $5, $10 million grants. And so it also allows us to extend grants because when we were in Peru, it would have been a $3 million grant, but it was able to be extended because Lutherans gave money for us to be a partner there and could extend it for 5 years so we even have greater impact that way. And so donations from Lutherans and others will still be providing impact and leveraging of your dollars. The other thing that is really important for you to know about this grant is that we put a line in the sand as a board of LWR. We said, Daniel, go ahead and start exploring other partners, but just know that Lutheran is our core. And so, you know, he understands that. He's a Lutheran person, grew up in Wisconsin. But we said, absolutely, we want to remain Lutheran. We're Lutheran World Relief, and we want those values and our mission to remain regardless of who our partner is. So you should know that January 1st, Daniel Speckhard is the CEO of the combined organization. Rick Santos is an advisor. Our board chair is a Lutheran World Relief board chair. We both have individual boards. We now have a merged board of 15. There are 8 LWR people on that board. Gratefully, I was selected to remain on the board, and I'm thrilled. And 7 from IMA. The other thing is that since we're such completely different organizations, the duplication of employees, you might wonder, okay, you're going to grow to 350 employees now. 2 positions were redundant in this whole merger. One retired, one was placed in another job. So our organizational chart and employees remain pretty much the same. All of our senior vice presidents, whether they were leading the agricultural program with LWR or they were the strategic partnerships with IMA, they all are in the same positions in the new organization as they are now. So the continuity both for you're looking at LWR, but also, excuse me, for our grantors, the foundations and the governments. They want to know that the continuity is going to be there and the values and purpose is going to remain the same. Thank you. I'm going to get a swallow of this. Just my Arbonne fizz to keep my energy up. So anyway, I think that that's important for you to know as Lutherans, and for those of you who support us either in doing the kits and the quilts, or doing fair trade, or doing individual donations, that Lutheran is going to remain as a core. We're at the legalese time, if you will, which is not a very exciting time, but we have to go through the legal documents and just imagine HR, and I know some of you have been through mergers. You know, one organization does it one way, another does it another way, and so we're at the point of our way, you know, doing it together. So the staffs are working really hard to merge these and make them fair for all the organizations, but it will be different. So that is perhaps
Will there be a name change?
There will be eventually a name change and a logo change, and so my business card won't look like that in a year. That little card about our mission and vision, that will change. Those will be, those bags will be collector's items because there will be a brand logo change by the end of this year once all the legal things are through. Right now we are known as LWR IMA. So it's LWR / dot whatever symbol, but it's LWR IMA. And we have our first board meeting in February, and so 7 of the people on the board I've never met, and they're coming from, I've met a couple on the phone, but I haven't met them in person, so it's going to be a really exciting time to see what we can do together. So I just want to thank, I should tell you, this is in Arusha, Tanzania. This particular community received LWR personal care kits, so he's learning how to wash his hands before he eats and that sort of thing, because the soap was in the package. And also they received school kits, and this is for especially children from the ages of 4 to 7 who wouldn't be going to school without our helping and supporting them in Arusha, Tanzania. But you can imagine there's a lot happening now, and the whole purpose of this is first of all to thank you for being a partner, Ascension, for being a partner with LWR for all of these years, and also to say we're working to create healthier communities, building sustainable livelihoods, reducing human suffering. Excuse me, I've had a cough, so. But mostly to end extreme poverty, or like Daniel Speckhard says, we want to change the world. So, I'm going to have some time for questions, but I'm going to pass this around so you can put your cards in there, and we'll have a drawing. I think Barbara got yours. Yeah. So what kind of questions do you have? I'm not sure I have all the answers, but at least I wanted to let you know of this big change for us and the excitement that we feel for what we can do together in a very complementary way. Mary.
Where will your headquarters be?
Good question. Right now, LWR is in Baltimore. We're in the Lutheran Center that was built right on the Inner Harbor. If you're ever in Baltimore, and I know that the Grabrocks were there this last summer, we have wonderful, hospitable people that would love to meet you as Lutherans. You can hear from Paul and Jean about their experience. But we're in Baltimore. IMA is in Washington, D.C. Much smaller office because most of they have many fewer employees than we do. Now we're together, I can't say that. But anyway, IMA is in Washington, D.C. We're going to keep that office for a while because strategically we think being where the grants are being written and the relationships you have, we're down there a lot anyway, so we'll keep that office for a while. As a matter of fact, Daniel, being CEO of both organizations, splits his time between both offices to be with the staff and to be in that environment. So we have 2 offices, planning to keep them. Domestic offices, we have others around the world. Yeah. Yes, Julie.
Does LWR ever do any, oh my gosh, you know how Habitat, you can go and volunteer and do a worldwide habitat project? Does LWR do that?
We don't do that anymore, but we did, didn't we, Mary? Mary was a leader of several LWR international trips and took a number of friends to Africa, Peru, and I'm not sure of other places. It has been, it is becoming increasingly more difficult to do that. And one of the reasons is that the remoteness of where we work. We're in very remote areas, and I can tell you about the dirt roads and bumpy roads that we've been on and the trips that I've been on as a board member. And with that comes security risks, and it also puts an extreme burden on our staff. It takes them to be hospitable to a group of 10, 15 people, takes them away from the task of what the projects they're supposed to be focused on. So we're really not doing that. I've heard of many wonderful experiences in the first class this morning. Julia White was talking about how she went with Augsburg when they did a trip with Fair Trade and LWR. And so in the past, in this earlier part of the century and in the 1990s, I know that was done. They take the board every 2 years to see some of our projects, and it's really for accountability and also familiarity of the work we do. Last year we were supposed to go to Kenya in February. In December they canceled it, and they canceled it because they couldn't assure the security for the board in Kenya. So they sent us to Colombia. Paul says, so, Kenya isn't safe, but send them over to Colombia. Yeah, so anyway, and before that they sent us to Honduras. We flew into San Pedro Sula, which was the murder capital of the world. And you said, boy, you know, what kind of insurance do we need on this? But one of the things that they really, this ties in, and I didn't share this, but when we were in Colombia last February, when we would go to the ends of the roads to see our coffee farmers, in addition to the 4 or 5 SUVs that we were in, they also had an ambulance following us.
Yeah.
Because there are no health care clinics in these remote areas. And when we had been in Honduras the year before, one of the participants in the group that we were in had a health issue and had to be taken to a clinic. Well, when we're hiking around on irregular rocky paths up to see the coffee plants with farmers, you don't know if you're going to break an ankle or what you're going to do. So that gave us a certain kind of assurance that we were safer doing that with health care there. We didn't need it, thankfully, but it gave us some assurance when we were doing these 2 days of field trips. But I keep thinking of the people in those communities, and that's what we're trying to deal with, is that they would have to, the breadwinner, if somebody was ill in their house, they would have to go to a clinic maybe a 2-day trip away or a 1.5-day trip away because there's no health services right there. That's what this strategic partnership with the IMA we hope to change, so that the breadwinners that we work with in farming also can stay healthier in their communities. So, what other questions? Yes.
Okay. There's several things.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a tendency that as family size increases, and I'm saying a tendency so you don't say, well, that's not always true. As family size increases, poverty increases of that family. I also believe that, and there's been studies, but once again it's a tendency, as people get busy with work and they learn and they're busy, then family size birth rates decline. The other thing is, how do you create these jobs? These jobs are created by any corporation such as Arrowhead Water that's bringing things in, or Bandages, Johnson & Johnson, they have to set up manufacturing at the smallest degree. It may just be handling boxes, dispatching, but within a fixed time, there has to be manufacturing almost 100% of that item, and that's going to create the jobs. And that is going to possibly reduce poverty. Now, worldwide poverty has been decreasing, right, over, I don't know, it's 20 years. It is decreasing for whatever reasons. There are my concepts.
Yeah.
And the other concept is housing. I've worked on designing housing for Puerto Rico and for Houston. It started out that way. And I conclude shipboard containers are the best idea. I think there's junkyards of shipboard containers, and trucks and ships carry them in, and they can be rusted and old. You take them into Puerto Rico, those people are going to love them. They'll learn welding. They have templates. They'll cut out windows. They'll put in doors. You can put them in the ground for flooding, like a submarine, and have tube in there so water goes in there. And that prevents the one up top, because they float. The problem is they float.
Yeah.
So it will anchor it. And you put solar cells on the top. You put roofs that bring to capture the water. And they can almost be self-existing, meaning human waste and animal waste is biodegradable. It can be used for energy. Cans are the problem, metal cans. The other thing is you can have a bicycle, so where a human being is studying, he can be biking and generating electricity. Okay?
There's a lot of imagination. That's why I was at a seminar one time when we were asked how hopeful we are, if we are hopeful for the world or not. I'm on the far side of hopefulness for our world. And partly is the ingenuity and what technology can do. There are drones delivering medicines in very remote villages that wouldn't have access otherwise. So I love that is the ingenuity and everything. And as you heard Eric talk about today, part of it is that some of these countries just do not have infrastructure, or they do not have the leadership that allows their people to thrive. And so what Eric pointed out in Jubilee USA is the overarching issue that causes so much poverty, because there's nothing left for the people that really need it, such as roads, schools, and infrastructure. So, what other questions here? Howie?
Well, I want to first of all say an affirmation and thank you for your serving on this board. It's been such an important position, and I'm grateful you're there. Second, to have LWR looking ahead and saying if we're going to be able to do even more in the future, we have to look at other ways of doing the funding and the work together. So I certainly think that's a great move that they've done that. So I guess we're probably learning then also more about grant requests and what are the grant sources out there, and I'm sure that they're going to be able to help us with that even as we are. So just want to say thank you for putting us on the growing edge.
Well, thank you, Howie. I want to say it was Howie and Mary. Paul and I have been supporters of LWR for years. Howie had served as the board chair for LWR when he was bishop, and their involvement was contagious for us. So we increased our commitment to LWR, and I guess I'm really committed now. But I'm very excited about what we've been able to do and how we have grown and developed.
I was going to say, you mentioned the name change.
Yeah.
Have any idea what the new name would be?
Well, that's what we have said. We really want to keep Lutheran up front. It could be Lutheran World Health and Relief. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but there'll be people who are much more talented on that than I am. But you see, that was the whole discussion on the board. Is we don't take for granted that Lutherans are very involved. If you get coffee, we'll let you know, Martha. Your name is drawn. So I'm very hopeful that that will be a continuing presence. Where'd that basket end up? Let's draw a couple names. Let's have another question.
It wasn't a question, I was gonna say, I think keeping Lutheran in there is a good idea, because even people who aren't Christians, when I talk to people, are aware of Lutheran World Relief.
Absolutely. It's not only Lutherans that support us.
Right.
Yep. And now with having the other denominational relief services, now I'm not at all sure that the Episcopalians are going to flood the new organization, but they have supported IMA. So there may, there are Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Methodists, Adventists, other large church bodies that have been supporting IMA too.
So Lutherans and everybody else.
So Paul, will you draw a card, because I have some things I want to give away. Any other questions before we go? Draw two. Any other questions? Well, you know me, I'm around, so when you do, give me a call, email, my card is there. Well, the Caudells. Do you like medium or bold coffee? You're a medium. Okay. And Marcia even wanted you to have a fair trade. There you are. And if you get something in a bag and it isn't your flavor, talk to Marcia. Fair Trade Sunday is next Sunday. Curry Grab Rock. You're never late. There you are. There you are. Some fair trade products, and next week is Valentine's shopping, so if you want special chocolates or anything, I know that Marcia would be here for you. But thank you for your attention, and especially thank you for your support of LWR. Again, I just was so thrilled. I talked with Steve last fall when he asked me to do another class, and I said, I'd really like to do it early in the year because there's going to be a big announcement, and I want Ascension to be one of the first congregations to know about it. So it worked out, my schedule and his, and just-in-time videos. So anyway, thanks a lot for your